So, ladies and gentlemen, it's very nice to be here. And what I would like to talk about is what we're doing at the Royal Institute of Technology. My name is Mathias Uhlén, and I'm a professor here at the university. So I thought I would just start by quickly saying a little bit about life science in Sweden, then say a little bit about our new center in life science, Science for Life laboratory, then go on and talk about the Human Cell Atlas and more particularly the Human Protein Atlas, and then say a few words about a new, very exciting project, which is the wellness profiling that we're doing here at the Royal Institute. A little bit about Sweden. This is just to show you that we are good at innovations here in Sweden, and we're very proud of it. And this is just from the OECD last year, showing that at least for this ranking, Sweden is number 2 in the world in innovations. We also have a lot of startups in Sweden and a lot of money going into it. And it's just very nice to see that we have a very big increase of startups, both in the tech field, in the financial field, but also in life science. What is also nice for us is that we're seeing some of the manufacturing moving back to Sweden, as can be seen on this slide, where we have several of the big multinational companies that are now actually putting drug manufacturing and building that here in Sweden. What is very interesting for us working with proteins, that there is a sort of a silent revolution going on in the pharma and drug world, and that is a move from the good old chemical drugs into biological drugs. And right now, 6 of the largest of the 10 largest pharmaceuticals in the world are actually biologicals. They are proteins. And this, of course, is very exciting for someone like us that are studying the human proteins. I just thought I would show you 2 examples of spin-outs or startups from the KTH in the field of biological drugs, and this just shows you one biological drug that is active to gastric cancer, and it's just a comparison, and this is a collaboration with people in Korea and a company called Abclone. And we're very proud to have co-founded a company between the Royal Institute and South Korea, which actually made an IPO. They went onto the stock market in South Korea a few weeks ago. This is another company, a startup from our university. This company, Affibody Medical, is doing a new type of biologicals that we call Affibodies, and this just shows you one patient this summer that was treated with 1 dose of this KTH type of molecule, and you can then see how dramatic change with a single dose of this new biological drug, and it kind of illustrates the power and almost a miracle of these new biological drugs. So I also want to, before I turn into the Cell Atlas, just say a few words about the Science for Life Lab. This is a new center. It's funded by the government in Sweden, and it now has about 1,200 people. And the idea here is that the global trends are that a lot of the medical research and environmental research is technology driven. It needs a lot of infrastructure, and it's a lot of big data. So what we're trying to do then in a collaboration between several universities is to set up this, and this we have done here in Stockholm and also in Uppsala. So here we have very fancy and expensive infrastructure that then can be used by all researchers in Sweden. One of the reasons we set this up is this dramatic change of DNA analysis. So this shows the cost of sequencing one of your genomes during the years, and you can actually see this dramatic shift, which is actually started here by the first next generation sequencing instrument, and we're very proud that the first one was with the KTH technology called 454 pyrosequencing. So at the Science for Life, we have now analyzed a lot of different organisms, as you can see here, but we also done a lot of human analysis of DNA. But I also want to sort of remind you all that we are now extremely good at creating and creating a lot of data. We are not so good at creating knowledge, and even less good at creating clinical applications. So I always, and it's maybe a little bit arrogant to quote yourself, but when it comes to big data, it's easier to generate the data than to get knowledge out of it. And that is why at the Science for Life, we now have more than 200 dedicated bioinformatics researchers that are taking care of all the big data that are produced. So the main topic here is to talk about the Human Protein Atlas. So this is a fantastic project that has been going on now for 15 years. And it has been a collaboration between a lot of different, actually 7 different universities here in Sweden, and then some very big important sites both in China, in India, and in South Korea. So it's a kind of Swedish-Asian type of international collaboration. We started this in 2003, and the idea is that all of you has about 20,000 Lego pieces or building blocks, and they are called proteins, and we want to characterize all of them. Where are they in the body? What are they doing, and so on, and really try to get a holistic view of the molecular Lego pieces of a human being. So that's a very humble project, but it is funded then from the Knut and Alice Wallenberg Foundation, so we're very grateful to them for funding this for now 15 years. So the first kind of exam of that was to actually analyze what proteins are in the different parts of the human body. And this was published in Science 2 years ago, and we already have 1,400 citations. So it's one of the most cited life science publications that year. And in that, we were then saying how many proteins are there in the liver, in the brain, in the kidney, and so on. And we are very proud of being the one that first described this. The second flagship sort of paper came only a few months ago in Science in May. This is headed by Emma Lundberg, and that shows you the subcellular localization. Where are the proteins inside the smallest unit in life, the cell? And they showed, and she and her team then showed where are different human proteins in the different, which ones are in the mitochondria, which are in the nucleus, and so on. And then only a few weeks ago, we had the third kind of stage of the Protein Atlas, what we call a Pathology Atlas. And in this, we were happy to collaborate with some bioinformatics people, systems biologists at Science for Life, that actually allowed us then to analyze all the involvement of all genes in basically all cancers. Sorry. So we have the normal tissues, the subcellular, the cell, and now the cancer. As sort of summarized here then, the Protein Atlas then, we are starting to map out then both on the tissue, cell, and pathology side. We're also very proud that there is an organization in Europe called Alexi, and they selected the core resources, data resources this summer. And the Protein Atlas was selected as one of these core resources of fundamental importance for the wider life science community. So we're very proud of that. This doesn't show very well, but this is actually the visitors from the different parts of the world. And what I can tell you then is that this is United States, this is Europe, and this is Southeast Asia. So we have now more than 200 countries that have gone into our atlas. We have about 250,000 visitors per month. And it's interesting to see that the vast majority of those visitors come from the United States, but actually now number 2 is China. They used to be number 15, but they have moved up and is now the runner-up. But they still have quite a lot in order to get up to the Americans. So finally, I just want to say a little bit about wellness profiling. So what we want to use this resource for is not only to characterize and map the building blocks, but also to try to see how are they distributed when you're healthy, when you have disease, and so on. So a few years ago, we decided to form a new center called the KTH Center for Applied Precision Medicine. It's funded by another philanthrope, the Erling Persson Family Foundation. And what we try to do there is to combine the sort of classical diagnostics with medical imaging, which is, you take pictures, and you will hear more about that later today. And then these new technologies that we have developed at Science for Life. In order then to have early detection of disease such as cancers, but also to allow individualized treatment. So what we've done, I think, is the world's most comprehensive analysis of health. And we have followed then 100 people for now almost 2 years. And every 3 months, we have they have met our nurse with taking all the different samples you can think about, and then analyze them with all the new technologies. So these 100 people are one of the most analyzed persons on this planet. So we have the sort of standard clinicals, we have an activity tracker so we know when they are walking up the stairs and so on. We have the magnetic resonance imaging, so we have very fancy imaging. We have whole genome sequencing, so we know their whole DNA. But then also we have a lot of protein analysis in blood, because the blood is a very good mirror of what is going on in the human body. And then by doing very comprehensive, very large studies on the proteins, we hope then to learn about health and disease. Also, what is very exciting is that we have a new instrument to look at the immune cells of the blood. So we have about 117 cell types that are interacting to fight diseases and infections, and we are then analyze them with a special techniques that I don't have time to. Then we have the metabolites. These are the small molecules which are created in the body, and we are looking at them both in the blood and in the urine. And then also what is very interesting now is to look at the microbiome, all of these bacteria that are in the gut, and try to see how much of that is influenced and changed during 1 year. And what we try to do in this project then is to follow these people and then see, do they change? Do they have a sort of a molecular fingerprint, each one of them, and how does it look? And this is a very complicated slide, so I don't want to sort of say too much about it, but just simply look at this one. Here we have one protein in the blood, and we have 8 individuals, and this is during 1 year. And you can see that these 8 individuals have a higher amount of this protein in the blood than the rest, but they stay constant during 1 year. And this is a more holistic view of, here we look at almost 1,000 proteins, and each spot here is an individual. And if you see like this, that individual is changing a little bit in this profile during 1 year. But you can see that most of these individuals are unique from another, and they stay constant during 1 year. And this is, of course, very interesting information for us, because it shows that each one of you have your own molecular fingerprint of the proteins in your blood, and we should probably know about it before you start getting sick. So you can compare your new profiles with your standard ones. I think I skipped this one and just say a little bit about where we're heading then. So it is interesting for us because we are in the business of systematically mapping the building blocks of humans. And this is, of course, an old tradition in science to try to systematically go through nature. And I want to remind you that here in Sweden we have a guy called Linnaeus. He did the systematic analysis of biology in the 1700s. Then in the 1800s there was the sort of of century of chemistry, in my view, where all the elements, the chemical elements were actually being discovered, and about 25% of them was actually discovered here in Sweden, and a lot of them by this guy, Berzelius, who lived here in Stockholm. So we're very proud of the heritage of the Swedish scientists that helped in mapping biology and chemistry. So in the 1900s, as you all know, this was very much the century where all the small elements in physics were being determined, the quarks and so on. And obviously this was done by a lot of people around the globe. But what is so exciting now is that this systematic mapping is now moved into medicine. And we are now seeing all the building blocks of humans, but also other types being mapped with all of these new tools. So are we alone? No, absolutely not. I think the Human Protein Atlas was one of the first ones, and certainly the largest one, funded by the Wallenberg Foundation. But as some of you might have heard, we have a rather big effort by Paul Allen from Microsoft, forming an Allen Cell Institute a few years ago. And then just a few months, well, maybe a year ago, Sean Zuckerberg from the Facebook actually announced a new foundation to analyze the cell again in a biohub in the United States. We also have Google that has moved into this through their project Baseline. And IBM is trying to use the Watson now also in health and trying to then map out big data related to life science and medicine with their Watson computers. And then we also have lately the Wellcome Foundation in UK that has moved in and is now funding a human cell atlas. So what you can see here is that there is a lot of efforts now to map out the human biology and the building blocks of humans. And it's very interesting to see that a lot of the funding comes from philanthropes, but also that it comes from the IT side, which I find very, very interesting. So just today, we're very proud that the Sean Zuckerberg actually announced that they will fund 36 different projects in this field of mapping the human cell atlas. And of that, 7 of these 36 projects went to Europe, and 2 of them to Sweden, 1 to Emma Lundberg in the Human Protein Atlas, and 1 to the Karolinska. And we are, of course, very happy that the Sean Zuckerberg is actually also funding then this Swedish-based project. So finally, this is my second last slide. I just wanted to remind you that you can't do science without funding. And in our case, we have been very lucky to have philanthropes that have actually moved in and funded this very long-term project. So the Wallenberg Foundation, the Novo Nordisk Foundation, the Ellen Persson, the Heart and Lung Foundation, and now from today, the Sean Zuckerberg Initiative. And as you can see, all of these are philanthropes. So we are very grateful that these philanthropes are actually helping us to understand human biology and disease. And then before I end, I just want to say that we are not only doing basic research here at KTH, we are also trying to do applied research. And without going into the details, this is just some examples of startups that have come from these projects that I just talked about. And at least 4 of these are now listed on different stock markets, have very decent market caps of at least 10 billion Swedish, and working then both in the therapeutic field but also in the research field. So with that, I just wanted to say, let's have the take-home message I want to say is that we now have new tools to systematically map the building blocks of humans, and we should do that, and it's very exciting. And also remind you that medical research it's a very multidisciplinary discipline now, And large part of the medical research is data and technology driven. That's why it's so nice to be in a technical university. And with that, thank you very much for your attention.